All right, looks like we're good. So, hey, kids, welcome back to Grumpy Nostalgia. Well, I that up already. Start. Cut. Hi, kids, and welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia. Hi, kids, and damn it. All right, this one's for real.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
So, hey, kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to that blockbuster new release wall in your memory, grab a copy off the shelf, put it in the old VCR, and see what time has done to it. But probably more accurately, see what time has done to us. So, I'm Justin, that's Mike.
Good morning, good evening, and good night, wherever you are.
And we are here to help you navigate all those landmines littered down memory lane. Mike, we're going to do this one more time. Our third, we're kind of like Cal Ripken with these consecutive shows, Mike.
Okay.
Am I overstating it a little bit?
Get back to me in a couple more decades.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, little Lou Gehrig in there anyway. But yeah, so we're having a lot of fun, guys. Like I said, we're two older guys that have no right to be doing a younger man's game. But I don't know about you, Mike, but I found doing this podcasting is a lot of fun. Kind of a thing I've enjoyed that I wish I started doing earlier. You're kind of an empty nester, I know, and well, sort of. And I live a much more infantile existence, right? So we have no kids, but I spend a lot of my free time playing games and golfing and fishing. But to have something like this as an outlet, I think is pretty cool. It's really a lot of fun. There's only so much the Xbox can handle, right, Mike? So I found that another thing about getting old with the Xbox
Right.
is that I find myself competing against like age inappropriate people, like 12-year-olds like to kill me a lot. And they spend a lot of time explaining my sexual orientation to me while they're doing it. Sometimes my yeah.
Oh no! Do you get? Have you gotten teabagged?
Well, yeah,
Is
that's a very
something
that's a
happened
nice
to
term
you?
for it. Yeah, but it's a little toxic. So I thought maybe
Okay.
we'll finding something a little more age appropriate
Okay.
like this has been kind of fun. But I've really enjoyed this. Mike, are you are you along the same lines there? What do you think about doing all this? Just out of curiosity.
Oh yeah. Like ever since we've known each other, this is something we've done. Just like in the
Yeah.
car coming home from a movie or just somewhere out eating, we start riffing on like something we saw and what actor is doing this. It's like to me, this is just a carryover. And why not why not have people share?
Yeah, I remember that was my
joint
pitch to you. It's like, hey, what like we were having a conversation coming back from a show or something. I said, we could
Yeah.
put this on the internet, and it sounds kind of like what everybody else is doing
Yeah,
already.
it's
So
right. And it's the more modern equivalent of George Costanza telling Jerry in the diner, "Hey,
yeah,
this could be a show."
everybody's
us just
doing
sitting here
something.
talking.
We'll do nothing.
You know,
Here we are doing a bunch of nothing. So let's stop talking about us. Let's talk about the French, Mike. So we're going to go back in the time machine one more time this week,
we
kids, and we're going to look at I think really a Francophile's wet dream. Like this is the 1997 epic, The Fifth Element. Nice. We're going to go sci-fi this week. Yeah,
All
this was
right.
an interesting
Alrighty.
one. Ooh la la.
Ooh la la.
Merci. We were looking at some, there's really no real tie-ins. The movie release schedule is kind of soft unless you like dinosaurs right now. So we were just kind of going back and seeing films that had an impact on culture one way or the other. And this one came up and we thought we'd kind of explore that. So we're going to talk about The Fifth Element. This was released in 1997 on May 9th. It was directed by Luc Besson, a French filmmaker, kind of famous for La Femme Nikita was a big one of his. Leon, or as the Americans know that as The Professional, with Jean Reno as the hitman, and introduced us to Natalie Portman. That was one of his. I think more recently, Lucy and The Messenger and his passion project,
Oh
Valerian.
yeah. I only thing I can remember him
Yeah,
for was
Valerian.
the Joan of Arc movie that had
Yeah,
Thousand Blades of Steel or whatever it was called.
It,
Like
yeah,
it had a
the
really
shorter
long
title
title.
was Valerian, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yes.
Yeah,
It
kind of
kind of
suffered the
not did
same kind
well.
of fate as this one, at least domestically here in the states, at least. But we'll get into that a little bit. So this was written by Luc
Yeah.
Besson. He actually started writing this at 16 years old, and it kind of shows. And it was also co-authored by an author named Robert Mark Kamen, who's very famous for The Transporter. He wrote Taken, and one of my favorites, Karate Kid 3, Mike.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
is that where
completed
they go to the
the
island?
epic Karate Kid trilogy.
That,
Yeah,
yes. Okay,
yeah,
that was
yeah,
Hillary Swank, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Ralph Macchio had tapped
Coming
out
back,
at that
coming
point.
back to
So
me.
another B-lister that we met at Dragon Con. Remember seeing Ralph Macchio in the flesh?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I feel so
So
honored.
yeah, so this was an interesting sci-fi. It was kind of plopped into a real. We talked about this last time. It kind of shared the same summer as the Lost World Jurassic Park. It was kind of some white noise in a very busy summer. But one of the things I'm particularly fond of about this movie, when there's not a lot, but Bassan demanded that all the action scenes be shot in daylight and very bright. He didn't want he had seen a slew of action movies that all the action was kind of filmed on darker scenes, and he insisted that his cinematographer
Hmm,
shoot all the action in brightly lit scenes. So that's good at least.
interesting.
Yeah,
A little different than the
yeah,
Michael
yeah.
Keaton Batman movie.
So the casting on this was half the movie, Mike. There's a very interesting take on that. So I'm sure you kind of walk through the cast. You want to walk us through it, maybe?
Sure, yeah. I don't know any of the backstory behind it, but it's a very
Yeah.
eclectic cast. It's hard to say. Obviously, the big draw was Bruce Willis, who at the time had already established himself as an action star. But some people may not know he was a pitchman for Seagram's Wine Coolers. I still have that song in
Oh.
my head, unfortunately. And he was actually dabbled in music. He had an album called Return of Bruno. I don't know if anyone remembers
Yeah,
that one,
yeah.
but let's
Uh, Thank you for
let's
reminding me. I kind of got that out of my head, but now it's
that's
back. Thanks. Quite the
oh
vanity
that's
project, wasn't
that's
it?
back.
Yeah.
Vanity is perfect. It was yes.
Okay.
I'll go no further with that one. He's followed by one of my favorite actors, Gary Oldman. He plays the villain in the movie. He plays very good villains. He's been Dracula before this. He was Lee Harvey Oswald.
He's a patsy.
Um, yeah, he was a dreadlock pimp, I think, in
Oh
True
yeah.
Romance, if I remember right, which was a really, really weird character study. And he was Sid Vicious, so there's our tie-in from the last podcast, if anybody remembers that one. I like. He's a great method actor. He could do about anything, and I get him and William Defoe kind of confused because they seem to play a lot of the same characters, and very good actor. Another Englishman, Ian Holm, was in this movie.
Yeah.
Bilbo Baggins, as
Mike,
some people know him.
here's a good one for you.
Um, he was an alien. He was an
Oh, keep
android.
going. Keep going. Keep going. I'm sorry. Keep
Yeah.
going. Maybe you'll get there.
Oh no. So I'll say Ian Holm was also known for being in a lot of really high art kind of movies like Alien and Chariots of Fire. Really really brought a lot of gravitas to
How
these
about
movies, and also a Terry
yeah,
Gilliam
yeah.
stable.
My favorite, of
I
course,
mean,
is
yes.
he was in Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, with Miles O'Keefe. Hey, Mike,
No. Oh
Mike,
no, no, not Miles. No, 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 no.
Mike. How much O'Keefe was in that movie?
Don't do it.
That would be Miles.
Oh
Miles
boy,
O'Keefe.
Miles and Miles. That would be. I'm gonna go with my next cast member is Mila Jovovich,
Yeah.
Ukrainian
Known
born.
known
So she has that going for her. I
yeah.
think she's American
Known to
citizen by
some
this
as Mila
point.
Jovovich.
Yes, Yo-Yo. Yeah, I call her Yo-Yo Vic. I get her confused with
Oh
Lolita
yeah.
Davidovich and Mila Kunis for some reason. All those names kind of word salad me sometimes. Um, she is I- from what I remember, other than Resident Evil, she's kind of notorious for marrying directors.
Yeah.
I think she married obviously the or a French guy from this movie, and which maybe got her the role. I'm not going to make any assumptions, but I think she also married the Resident Evil guy, the Paul
She married the
W. S.
untalented
Anderson.
she married the untalented Paul Anderson.
Yeah, that okay. The, the one with two middle initials. Yes, that guy. But for a model,
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah,
decent actress in my book. Then those are our main headliners. There's also Tiny Lister, who some people may know from the movie Friday, and he's been in a lot of crime and horror movies. He plays the president in this movie, which is
yeah,
pretty progressive. Um, and he is with one of his castmates from Friday, Chris Tucker,
yeah,
who I guess to describe him today, he's kind of like a Kevin Hart
yeah.
pre-prototype model. He was kind of the Eddie Murphy school of acting, but other than this movie and Rush Hour and Friday, I couldn't think of anything he did
Well,
really after the '90s.
one
I
thing
don't
he
know what he's
did
been
do
doing
was
lately.
introduce me to another level of hell, and I'll. Wha-
you, you,
yeah, one,
but
yeah.
we'll get to that
Dante
later.
missed this one, but
Uh,
I found it. So keep going.
oh my gosh! Then we had some other filler characters like this guy I remember from Blade Runner, but he's plays a general in
Oh,
this movie.
great
Brian
guy.
James, another good last name,
Yeah,
and then we had Luke
yeah, a
Perry, who
cameo. Yeah,
luckily we don't get to see too much of our 90210 vet, and John Neville, who has a really brief appearance at the start of the movie, who some people know as another Gilliam actor from Baron von
oh yeah,
Munchausen, or some people might know him from as the well manicured man from the X
nice
Files.
pull. Yeah,
And Justin, I got two more cast members. I've kind of got distracted in the closing credits, so I didn't catch their names. But the two voices on the phone, one was Corbin Dallas's mom, who kept reappearing through the movie as kind of a gag, and then his boss named Finger. You never see these people, but they had familiar sounding voices, and I didn't know if you knew, like if they were
uh,
famous
yeah.
or if they were just kind of
Look at
throwaway
you.
character
What a
actors.
great co-host. Going right to the segue. So the apparently Bruce Willis is Jewish because his mother is. Uh, Unfortunately, Mike, that talented actress goes uncredited. But the other
Oh
actor
shucks.
who
Okay.
I regard as Lieutenant Exposition, his name is Finger, and he is played by an
Hmm.
uncredited Vin Diesel. Mike,
Oh my gosh, that was Vin Diesel. That's crazy. The voice
yeah,
did sound
yeah.
familiar. Oh
So
wait, I had one more
yeah,
guy.
never,
One more guy I remember was Lee Evans. I wanted to point him out. When you said Finger, I
yeah,
thought of his name was Fog in this movie, and some people might remember him from
yeah. Of
something about Mary.
course,
He was the pizza delivery guy who was like masquerading as a architect and tried to get Mary. Gr- Great English stand
yeah.
up guy, but I don't, other than that, that's about all I can remember him being in as far as American movies.
He's lumped in with a haze of like 100 fussy, irritable, jumpy, nervous
Yeah,
European actors. Everybody in here either has mild Tourette's or some sort of weird personality disorder where they're jumpy and scared and
yeah.
stammering. And
Yeah,
we'll get to that. So
it's I call it. We'll
yeah,
get to. I recognize it from Terry Gilliam movies, and like I said, I keep giving this guy's name, but this Luc Besson movie it seemed like a French accented Terry Gilliam movie, but I'll get to that later.
yeah, it has some Brazil elements to it for sure. I
Definitely.
thought, yeah. So yeah, that's a pretty eclectic cast. Bruce Willis is in there in the height of Bruce Willis fame. Um, Bassan wanted Jean Reno to play this at first
Mhm.
because his movie with the professional, but he opted out. I think about 3,000 actresses ended up auditioning for Lilu, which is the character that Mila Jovovich plays, but she ended up getting the part. Gary Oldman took this as a favor. Luc Besson had kind of financed one of Gary Oldman's kind of independent films, and they kind of he didn't even read the script. He just said, "Okay, I'll quid pro quo deal on that one." But Oldman's privately said that he's not a big fan of this movie. Speaking of Gary Oldman and Sid Vicious, I've been watching the Hulu series Pistol about the Sex
Oh yeah.
Pistols, and oh man, amazing! I'm so glad I picked up on that. The actors that play everybody are really kind of spot on, but Gary Oldman never got his due for that
Right.
role playing Sid Vicious. The problem is that Academy Award voters don't typically reward people that play dirtbags. And Sid Vicious was a really horrible kind of person, sympathetic, and Gary Oldman really is nailed that role, but he really never got any recognition. So that's it's unfortunate, but he's so great in that role. So I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, so the bigger stars of this movie are Jean Paul Gaultier, the designer who literally designed every costume, even the extras.
Oh wow.
He had a role in designing. So this movie lacks a few things, in my opinion, but what it does not lack is
Yes,
aesthetics. And
style.
the aesthetic value. This has held up for 25 years. Mila Jovovich's costume, for example, I mean that launched a million cosplays, right? You can't go to a convention where you don't see at least 50 to 100 young
Well
women
placed bandages.
donning this outfit. Well placed bandages, the smoky charcoal eye, and the orange hair, just an amazing look that just kind of lives on to this day. So we kind of talked about how it got to be. Let's talk about how it is. So the first time I saw this, Mike, it was kind of a solo event for me. I saw it in the theater. I think my wife, then girlfriend at the time, was out of town, so I had nothing to do on a Saturday morning, and I plopped myself down to this suburban Chicago theater and watched it. And I do remember kind of dozing off a little
Uh-oh.
bit, to be honest. I think I actually did it again this second time
Oh
through.
no.
It just I don't know. I'm a sci-fi genre fan, but this one just I don't know. It just didn't click the boxes for me initially. But so when I would say I hated it, but it was kind of an inconsequential thing to me. I just kind of went in and out in the theater and just got on my day back in 1997. Mike, do you remember the first time you saw this one?
Yeah, I saw a couple of friends of mine, and one of them had already seen it before. George, was raving and telling us this is the greatest movie ever. And like okay, and we went and see it. And I don't know if it's like groupthink at the time. When you see a movie with a couple other people that really are into it, and you think, wow, that was really good. But I remember seeing it in the theater in Charlotte and thinking, wow, this movie is really amazing. Just mind blowing almost at the time. So I was really impressed with it my first viewing.
Well, we'll fix that. All right, all right. So let's set the scene here. So it's early summer, 1997. The nation had been recovering for about a month after seeing Anaconda in theaters.
Was this did this movie come out after 12 Monkeys, or was it before 12 Monkeys? Do you remember?
I think it might have been. I think 12 Monkeys might have been
Like
this
95,
this
96.
fall.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was a couple.
Okay.
It was more of a holiday season
Gotcha.
thing. So as I mentioned, Anaconda had been in theaters about a month earlier, and we had about 3 more weeks to wait until the next kind of popcorn movie, which is the Lost World Jurassic
Oh,
Park, one of your favorites, Mike. So this kind of filled a little gap here. It opened the Cannes Film Festival, the Cannes Film
Con.
Festival. Yeah, so that was kind of going on in 1997. Other things in 1997, Mike, that were interesting. Charlton Heston was voted the president of the NRA about 2 weeks before this movie
All
came
right.
out. So
Get your hands off me, you dirty NRA member.
the damn dirty apes were in trouble. um, Interesting story everybody forgets about. About 2 days before this movie came out, Eddie Murphy got caught by police with
Foot
a
fetish.
transsexual prostitute in the
Yes.
car. Yeah, the transsexual prostitute was in the car, so he kind of made it through that one.
It
And then
I guess this came around the same time as Pluto Nash, so you can
yeah, I
imagine
think
that's a double
the
whammy
better
there.
press. And I think the better press was getting caught in the car with whatever. And then the nation was mourning because Married with Children had ended its 11 year run on TV, so we all had to find something else to watch. So that kind of sets the stage. That's where the country was, and then we decided we're going to go into the theater and watch this movie. So, Mike, if you're ready,
Hit the button.
hit the button. So the movie, it kind of opens up to this kind of low rumble. It's kind of an ominous thing. It's really kind of misleading because the opening credits kind of suggest there's a whole other movie, almost like a horror movie coming. The shots are beautiful and there's a really interesting tone. But it opens up in Egypt in 1914, and it's like, well, hey, is this a sci-fi movie? Because it opens up with this Peter Ustinov looking archaeologist and his little friend Luke Perry, and they're kind of reading these hieroglyphics and trying to understand what they mean. And they've got a little Egyptian boy that apparently has narcolepsy. He just can't stay awake for some reason, and I'm starting to sympathize with this little kid. But as they're kind of interpreting the hieroglyphics, this this archaeologist determines that it tells the story of a great evil coming every 5,000 years, and there's these four elements that combine to that activate a weapon that can combat it, and it's just kind of where they left it. And then the aliens that wrote this message kind of show up in the middle of the desert, and they're kind of like robotic turkeys. I don't know another way to
Turkey's a good one.
describe them. Yeah,
Mon,
yeah.
mon, are they
So
Mondo
they kind
Mondo Shavans? Is that what they pronounce that? They kept saying
Yeah, the Mondo
something.
shamans.
Mondo Shaman.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they come in and they take they take these rune stones and tell them, this is how you these stones have to be protected because that's how you activate the bomb or the weapon or whatever it is. And they tell the priest to pass this along. The priest comes in and interrupts them and does this kind of failed murderous attempt,
Yeah.
which I couldn't understand. But the aliens come and they take these stones and say, there's a great evil coming, and these stones need protected. So that's the opening scene, and of course, Luke Perry he's got to justify his screen time, so he tries to shoot some things, and just I don't know, I kind of lost interest already by now, but they kind of fly away, and then we jump back to we do a quick cut to 300 years later, and the aforementioned great evil is hovering outside the Earth. It's kind of like the Death Star, and there's a little interplanetary galactic force that's there to protect the Earth, and they shoot it, and it kind of makes it grow. So, like the flaming moe, Mike, fire made it good. So this thing's on the precipice of Earth, and we get introduced to President Zeus, Tim Lester. Hollywood's most famous lazy eye.
Oh god.
And so that they're trying to figure out what they're going to do there, and then the priest played by Ian Holm, Bilbo, he comes in and says, "Hey, I know what that is. We're under attack, and you need to help me out." So they're kind of loosely setting up some expositions to what's going to happen in the movie. Loosely, yeah. And then meanwhile, we cut back to Bruce in his little tiny little apartment, which was roughly about the size of my first apartment, Mike. But he has this conversation with Finger, as we mentioned earlier, played by Vin Diesel, and he basically tells you everything that he's a former soldier who's kind of been disgraced, and now he's driving a cab in a futuristic Earth. Yeah. So, still with me, Mike?
What'd you say?
Yeah.
No,
So
I will say
to,
the exposition of Bruce Willis's character was not too heavy handed. You can see his medals on the shelf. This guy was a special forces veteran, and he's doing this kind of lame taxi cab job. And I think that was established pretty quickly and not flawlessly, but it's better than some movies I've seen.
It keeps you going at least.
Yeah.
So it's enough to make you say, okay, give me a little more. What do you got?
Yeah.
So as this evil presence is hovering, outside Earth, the Manda Shamans, the big robot turkeys, the Manda Shaman aliens that are these keepers of the stones, they come back to Earth to try to help deliver them. And then as they do that, they're kind of intercepted by these the Mangalores, Mike.
Pigmen.
These big. I thought they were more like pugs, like killer pugs.
I guess I just
Yeah.
I picture them more as pigmen or something like that. But
So the pigmen come in and they blow up the ship
easily.
Like,
I mean,
the good aliens get.
this has to be the Mondo
No
Shaman
shields, yeah.
have like the worst spaceship of all time. I mean, I get they're pacifists. They want peace, but my God, put get a deflector shield. Maybe a cannon of some sort to fight back. I mean, geez, what the hell?
Their only existence was to defend the Earth.
Right.
They might want to be able to defend themselves or their ship at some point. But yeah, they get hit by this drive-by, and these pig guys kind of wipe them out.
It's like two TIE fighters.
And then
It's like two TIE fighters knocking out like a Star Destroyer or something. I mean, just come on.
Hey, that could happen, Mike. That could happen. It's the Force.
Ah.
But anyway, these after they do this attack and this drive-by, they report back to Zorg, Mike, played by Gary Oldman, saying, "Hey, we're done." So at this point, they both want to search the crash site because they assume that the stones are there, both parties. So the good guys get to the crash site first, and they manage to salvage this like one little robotic hand. That's the only kind of organic matter that was left. And then for some reason, unbeknownst to me, they take it back to this laboratory and they kind of Jurassic Park it. They take the genetic material from this hand and kind of do like a 3D print uh, to bring it back to life, and you know, this so it creates this the character played by Mila Jovovich, Lilu.
Lulu.
She's got a very long name, but she goes Lilu for short. So I think that the trade up from a metal turkey to Mila Jovovich is perfect, probably pretty a good
Yeah.
one. Yeah, so she's stuck in the little capsule there, and she's the perfect being, Mike.
Perfect.
And perfect, yeah. So she gets put back together, and the thermal bandages are put on her because she's essentially nude for the first part of this scene. So there you go, kids, enjoy that for a PG-13 movie. But she gets stuck in this capsule, and she of course gets busted out. She breaks through and takes off, and she escapes and runs out the building and smashes into Bruce Willis's cab, which was that's how they meet.
Can we?
I thought the CGI.
Yeah, let me. Let's have a word about the soundtrack at this point. There's some odd.
Oh, that's right where I was going.
There's some odd music choices in this first 30, 40 minutes of this movie, and that was one of the weirdest. Is the
minute she crashes into the cab, the weird music kicks in. Right?
Yeah, it's like I'm thinking I'm like at the Trocadero or something, or Ricky Ricardo's Copacabana. I was like, what's going on here? This was just bizarre music choice for that scene.
For those that haven't seen this movie, try to imagine you're in World Market and you're listening to the sounds over the speakers. Yeah, it's just interesting melange of like international world music. Typical world music is code for crap that can't get played on the radio. But yeah, so yeah, just interesting, kind of thematically mismatched
Right.
too. It's this song doesn't go with this scene, but there's a lot of that. So she hooks up with Bruce Willis, and they go on a little CGI heavy chase through New York, and the bad guys get hurt, and it's funny and all that kind of stuff. Law enforcement gets killed, and that's a good time. Blah blah blah. And then she kind of pieces together some English and says that she needs to be taken to Vito Cornelius, which again a great movie name. A 16-year-old kid would certainly come up with Vito Cornelius, played by Ian Holm. And I thought this was funny, Mike. They find him through the phone book.
Oh, there we go.
The future. So they show up on the Ian Holm Bilbo's door, and he immediately realizes that, hey, whoa, the perfect being is in my house now. So,
and she's a girl.
yeah. Imagine that, right? I guess that's one takeaway, a positive takeaway about Luc Besson. A lot of his main characters are these strong, empowered female characters, which are kind of interesting, especially in this genre. He kind of was on the forefront of a lot of that, at least.
I'm going to throw this out there. You look at all the characters in this movie. This is the most diverse movie I've ever seen, and we're talking about something that's 25 years old. But you look at the cast and just the faces and all the scenes, and obviously aliens. Hey, you got that. But other than maybe Cloud Atlas, this movie had the most wide range of ethnicities I've ever seen in a movie. It was amazing. I know it takes a European kind of mindset to create this, but I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, it kind of reinforces that in the future the geopolitical boundaries are gone, and it's really just kind of one civilization.
Right.
So So as this happens, Gary Oldman's trying to get these stones because he wants to provide those to the evil power. So he finds out these stones are not in the ship, and then they had done a little misdirection there, and they had actually Lilu had given these stones to a diva, which I thought was kind of a cool thing. But there's the diva in the literal sense, an opera singer has been carrying these stones. So Oldman goes Oldman crazy, which is he's good for at least 3 or 4 of those freakouts in every one of his movies that he portrays. He loses his mind at some point.
Yeah, he has it's an off-putting to hear the Southern accent, but it was actually pretty spot on, I guess. I mean, like I've said before in this same podcast, you hear Southern accents and they're always done the same way, but he had some nuance to it, and it actually sounded believable. I mean, especially coming from an Englishman. And like I said, other than
Yeah,
the fact,
yeah,
of course, he's the villain and he has a southern accent. It was, I was very impressed because I think he pulled off a. He didn't really have many lines in JFK, but he did pull off like a Lee Harvey Oswald kind of Texas.
yeah. He had that little Texas.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean,
So
he's been down this road before, so I got to give a little shout out for that. That was impressive.
yeah, he saved our lives. He'll spare yours. It kind of comes to a head here where the diva, as it's found out, she's going to be performing on this like pleasure planet Flostine. I forget what it was actually called.
Uh,
But
Floston, like Lost
Floston,
in
yeah,
Paradise. I think is the
Floston,
gag in that.
Floston Paradise, yeah. So the idea is that all these parties, the evil pigs and the good guys and they all need to get there to get these stones first from this diva. So it's on. So then the the movie kind of shifts to the next big set pieces, which is on this I guess you call it like a cruise ship,
Yeah.
like a holiday cruise ship. And I don't know why, but the ended scene of them getting ready to get on the ship was just what was going on there?
Oh, with like
It
the
just,
switching of the identity of Dallas Corbin or whatever. Is that what you're talking about? Or Corbin
yeah,
Dallas?
they had this little convoluted plot
Yeah.
element to get Bruce Willis is convinced by his old military guys to take this special operation, and so he does that on that account. But he's also the second way he gets on there is that he won some sort of contest. Uh, but yeah, the movie wastes about 25 minutes in the middle of the movie just getting everybody into this, getting there at the train station, the tickets, getting on
Yeah,
just some
this whole the
moderate.
whole little section all the way till they get into space was had a really weird tone
Yeah,
to it. I even wrote that down. I was like, the pairing of the lifting off of the ship with you know a, another pair having sex at the same time and a guy getting blown up. I was like, that's a weird.
yeah, they really packed a lot in there. So I wrote it down because it's right here. It's 1 hour and 11 minutes. I consider this the film's D-Day, and this is where we get introduced to Ruby, played with a very subtle performance here by Chris Tucker. I This is where the movie says, "I dare you to like me anymore. I dare
Yeah,
you."
this
So he comes in as this fussy television host with this unbelievably odd choice for a voice. I read some stuff after, just trying to I want to understand what happened here, Mike. And they told him to go. Prince and Michael Jackson were in the fray for this, as they're like the long shots to be cast in
oh
here.
my
And
gosh.
I think I think Bassan probably told him to go heavy on the Prince
Yeah.
angle. But I don't. But yeah, words fail me.
I wrote down on my sheet here, Chris Tucker, question mark, thoughts, question mark. I was, I was at a loss for words. I'd forgotten how weird this was, like his introduction was,
Yeah,
it was like you know what, for our longtime listeners, if they would like to go back and listen to our Batman podcast, they will remember a scene where Jack Nicholson goes into a museum as the song Party Man by Prince plays. Picture that scene in your mind, and then you have the introduction of Chris Tucker in this movie, and they're very similar kind of off-putting scenes to be placed within the movie.
yeah. So the high pitched, rapid fire dialogue that it really provides. It. I guess it was supposed to be funny at some point, but to do it the entire movie and to scream and yell and. But I'm going to try to keep
I
going
think
here.
it's. Well, let's pause for a minute. I think this is a Europe. Okay, I'm speaking for Europeans, but as an American, I picture this as a European kind of. I'm not going to say mentality, but the French especially, like this is almost a sense of humor kind of aspect where you would have a museum, say, there's Mona Lisa, there's Botticelli, there's over there there's a Rembrandt, and a Van Gogh, and then in the middle of this room is a toilet, done by a modern artist, and it's very avant-garde to a Frenchman or a French woman, and this is the toilet in this movie, and like I think
Yeah,
it's thrown in there almost to like not challenge you, but just to kind of I guess challenge is the word for it because you're either going to love it or hate it, and I think this particular scene would turn off a lot of American sensibilities. Let's say.
Well, yeah, I chose the latter. I think I honestly could have enjoyed this movie if that character had been left out. Or I could see a scene or two,
Yeah.
but the entire second and third act.
Yeah, he
Okay,
got it. It got for
so
me. It got old really quick. At
uh,
first, you're like, "Oh, this is interesting." He's.
yeah,
They still have radio 200 years in the future is kind of a cool idea. Radio Cosmos. That sounds really neat.
yeah,
Like a universal radio station.
yeah,
And you're thinking, "Oh, okay. Well, he's going to be there just to kind of fill us in on some expository detail." But no, he comes along with us for the whole rest of the movie, and you're like, "Oh my gosh."
yeah. I'm gonna go with it stings. My review. But let's get back to the movie because we
Sorry.
could spend all day
Yeah.
talking about that. So anyway, the diva Plavaguna, who was really kind of a cool looking character, kind of a blue squid looking woman. She ultimately performs her aria, and we're welcome to like a brief respite. It's like an oasis of real culture. She sings this beautiful song, and she kind of shows her vocal range, and it's just kind of a neat little scene. And it's kind of like it sets up like a bit of like a Godfather montage. There's all these violence is kind of juxtaposed against this beautiful aria that she's singing, and at the end, the pig guys come in and kind of start shooting up the place, and she ends up getting shot. And Bruce Willis is in his tuxedo, watching the show, and he runs up on stage to try to save her, and she tells him that I have the stones. The stones are inside her. So it's kind of a gross tauntaun type scene where he reaches in and
Okay.
pulls out these stones, and they kind of hightail it out of there. But at this point, Bruce remembers that he's actually Die Hard, right? And we got to use Bruce Willis for what he's built for. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of John McClane type running through the balcony, shooting things, and he kind of kills all the bad guys. And there's a lot of explosions and boom, boom, booms and stuff like that. And sadly, Ruby is not one of the dead as a result of this. But it's kind of rushes to this conclusion here, and that's I think another thing structurally where this movie was kind of odd. You couldn't really clearly tell where the second and third act started or began. That was kind of blended together
Yeah.
there. But the idea is that they got these stones, and Gary Oldman gets duped out of them, and he blows up on the ship. And you notice that Gary Oldman and Bruce Willis never meet.
That's
They're
right.
never in
Yeah, I
the
thought
same
about that. Like
scene
that's
together.
kind of interesting that they
Yeah.
our hero and villain never have to
So
deal with each other.
right. So all the while, this menacing force, this great evil is hovering outside the earth, and they bring these stones back to Egypt. They kind of circle back to where the beginning of the movie is, and they set up the stones in these little pillars and activate the stones. And then Mila turns out to be the fifth element, hence the title. She sits in the middle, and she harnesses the energy of all the other elements and becomes the weapon, and then kills the Death Star at the end. And that's kind of where the movie ends, Mike. And then what I thought was is a happy ending, and of course, and it was interesting visual effects. But as the credits started rolling, even
Oh
Hulu
no.
wanted me to end this movie. It's usually I didn't have the opportunity to watch the credits because Hulu was like, okay, you've seen enough, let's move on to the next thing. So but yeah, so I was kind of sitting at the end there thinking, okay, it's a lot of eye candy. But yeah, and that was kind of the end,
Yeah,
Mike.
well,
It was over before I really knew it.
yeah, that the ending seemed very quick. Once the light destroys the our shadow planet or whatever, and we
Yeah.
got our obligatory Bruce and Mila kind of cuddling up inside the tube, freeze frame ending, I might add,
Yeah.
which was I
Oh, that's total
despise those.
90s.
I cannot stand that.
Oh,
Um,
that is 90s AF.
yeah, and and credits roll, and you didn't miss anything. It was a vaguely European kind of synth pop kind of song, and I did
Yeah.
find out that the Egyptian scenes were filmed in Mauritania, so that was interesting, and
Oh,
it was filmed at Pinewood Studios, which my goodness, it must have been
of course it was.
a
Yeah.
hotbed in the '90s of movies. It's just crazy how many movies were filmed inside the
Yeah.
studio there.
So I want to take this moment to clarify to our European listeners, who we have many, including now some from Serbia, Mike.
Serbia.
Um,
Oh,
this is
big Serbian
this
fan.
as Americans, we concede that we are dumber and less cultural than you guys are. So these are not criticisms; these are just observations
No.
about the difference between
One of my favorite
um,
soccer players comes from Serbia. Philip Kostic. He plays for Frankfurt. Just
oh
throw that in
yeah,
there.
there you go.
Yeah.
Throw it in, Mike.
I say
Bundesliga.
I'm just like you.
Please accept us. But yeah, so that's kind of it, Mike. So this movie made $17 million in its opening weekend, crushing the competition. I think it came out against the movie Father's Day with Robin Williams and
Gerard
Billy
Depardieu.
Crystal. Remember that one, Mike?
Oh no, they had okay, yeah, that one. Oh my
No,
gosh,
yeah, yeah. Yes,
forgot
and
that one.
it ended up making $63 million total, but it was the number one movie for a couple weeks until The Lost World came in and kind of blew everything out of the water.
Mm,
So it just kind of came and went in America, but it had, obviously this is probably more, you know, catered to a international audience. It made 264 million worldwide, and
yeah.
what's interesting about this movie now is that I guess you could say it's developed a bit of a cult status. And cult status is usually it's a hazardous term. So a lot of times it's a sign that movies that weren't that good uh, that people just end up watching them anyway. But to be a cult movie, it has to have this kind of grassroots. You can't call yourself a cult movie. It has to be bestowed upon you. And I guess this one could probably uh, classify, especially as we're speaking right now. There's the 25th anniversary of this 25th anniversary edition of this movie in theaters as we speak right now. We actually talked about going to see that. But our chatter and incessant commenting might have bothered the patrons at the theater, I'm sure. Uh, but this movie has some legs in terms of where it stands today. We'll get that here in a second. It got nominated for an Oscar, did not win for sound effects editing.
Oh,
It won several European awards, Mike, some BAFTAs and some French awards, of course. MTV didn't pay much attention to it.
oh
I
gosh.
feel compelled to throw them in every now and then. They nominated for the best fight scene with Mila beating up the pig
Oh
guys,
yeah,
but
that was good.
I didn't bother to see who won. But yeah, so it didn't really have a lot of impact initially in the United States, but but again, 25 years later, people know of this movie. They can spot the thematic elements of it. They can see the iconic images of it. They recognize that. So there's something to be said in that at least. But again, for our taste, I'm guessing, Mike. Well, I'll go first. So I mentioned we'll put them through the grumpy meter here. So the first time I saw this was in a theater by myself, kind of the polar opposite of what you saw it. And I didn't have anything to bounce anything off, so anybody was there for me. So I was like, this is okay, but really only a 2 out of 5. So watching this again, I literally had not seen this movie since that first viewing in the
Yeah.
theater, which is not always the case with these movies. But this one was a relook at it, and didn't really move a whole lot, Mike. It's just if I find if these things don't hit with the first impression, they rarely come back and
Huh.
change my mind about them. But
Yeah.
this was no exception. I kind of watched it again. And it's like, okay, this kind of cool, and then well, this is interesting, and this imagery is cool, and then
Right.
Chris Tucker comes in and takes care of the rest for me. So for me, my favorite part was the ending, just the literal ending of the film. But 2 out of 5 for me.
Oh my goodness.
So, Mike, anything on? What about on your side?
Oh, I want you to bear with me here because I have many threads that I have to kind of pull into a rope here because just random thoughts that kind of came up as I watched this. It's a very stylish movie, visually appealing. Like I said before, it's kind of Terry Gilliam with a French accent. It reminded me of. It had elements of like Brazil, like you said, 12 Monkeys, Total Recall, Blade Runner, if you want to throw that in there too. Kind of all
Yeah,
mixed
yeah,
together.
that's fair.
And like I say, stylized wise, it was almost like a comic book movie where everything was 2 dimensional. Like
Yeah.
even you go down to the actual lore of what the hell the enemy was. What was the shadow? There's none of that. Everything's surface level. Everything is just there, just like for eye candy. Like even like Ruby Road's
Yep.
haircut. It's just it was there. You're not supposed to question why it was there. This is what's happened.
I like the parts where he was scared and screaming.
Was that? Oh, I mean the second half of the movie? Yes, that was delicious.
Yeah, that one.
But
Awesome.
I guess what I was going to say was, if you want to put some meaning to this movie, I would say it was. If you want to say it's a satire of like Star Trek movies or Movies that are supposed to have like deep meaning, science fiction. It's almost like a satire of that. It's trying to do the opposite. It's saying, there's no deep meaning to it. Here's the evil. Here's the good guys. Let's put this puzzle together. Ta-da! And everything else besides that is just
Yeah.
kind of flash, flash, flash. In architecture and art, there's a term called stylized, which refers to like something that's kind of a broad caricature, a broad outline that almost picture a window that has all these elements to it that are around it, and it's not just a basic paned window you would see, but there's no reason to have all that decoration around that window. That's what it's supposed to be there for. The surface level of this movie is that you got all this decoration around the window, but you don't really know why this is happening. There's no motivations for some of the characters. Like I said, why is Zorg so worried about the Shadow? How did they even meet up? Why is Zorg a arms dealer? Presumably. Why the Federation? How did they get peace during the 200 years since our time? But how did this all come together and end up in New York? Why when
Do you
Go ahead.
do you think Tiny Lesser became the president because he beat Hulk Hogan?
Um, yeah, good one. You're probably scared.
Yes,
You
Mike.
scared him with that lazy eye. But even when Lilu's watching she's learning about war through the computer. There, she's looking at images of the war. Everything is from like
Yeah, was that the point in the movie to throw in commentary?
yeah, like why save the human race? That was the deepest and the dumbest part of the movie for me. Like, okay, why am I saving the human race if this is what they do? And you look through the little film reel she's looking at, and they show the same three pictures of Hitler. I mean, come on,
Yeah, and
let's be.
that got me angry because Cameron had done James Cameron had done the exact same thing in The Abyss 10 years earlier
Oh yeah, you're
at the
right.
same time, and it had more resonance to it. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
and I'm like
yeah,
thinking they must have achieved peace by 2214 or whatever this takes place, because in that last 200 years something good must have come out of the human race. I mean, look at it. There's a black man as president. There's all this diversity. Um, isn't that worth saving? It kind of that kind of irritated me a bit. Um, but
there's all the models, fashion models that could be in a movie.
stop it.
Weren't they great actors? Those all those models.
Oh, the stewardesses, yes. Oh,
Uh,
man. And
uh,
I mean, it gives oh yeah, I got more notes here. Oh my gosh, here we go. This movie gives Einstein the finger. The theory of relativity just is thrown out the window. They go in light speed to
yeah,
go to this hotel. Obviously, everything there's supposed to be a countdown or a clock to like when the Earth dies. I think it's 20 hours or two. Is it 2 days? 20
yeah,
hours. Anyway, that's just blown out the window. I mean, it's like forget it. Just
yep,
you should really just relax. Don't worry about this.
right.
And this is very
It
irritating to me. This is all stuff I didn't notice when I watched this 25 years ago. I just enjoyed the ride and looked at the visuals and was like, wow, this is great. I was like Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange. But I actually enjoyed what I was watching. And I mean, it's I'm looking at it now, I'm saying this doesn't make sense. And the whole Egyptian thing with the puzzle, I mean, can you imagine ancient alien shows like having a hard on about watching something like this and they, wow, that's right. This movie's so true. Like,
Yeah, see, yeah,
see, we're right. We're right. But you think about how the movie like Interstellar that we just seen a few years ago, how they treated theory of relativity. And then how this movie's like, screw it. Let's have more scenes of Ruby Rhodes yelling and having sex with stewardess. But
yeah,
I can see how. To wind it all up, I can see how this could be considered popular because if you look at it on the surface, it is a good comic book kind of movie. You read a classic comic, you don't get a lot of the background, you don't know a lot of the emotions going into it, but it presents a story, one, two, three, ending, and that's what this movie did. So I mean, it did accomplish that, and
yeah,
like you said, the costumes hold up now. I mean, obviously, when you're filming a movie in the future, you can kind of get away with
yeah.
things and say this is what it's going to look like in 2200. But I think that part holds up. It's very stylish, and I'll give it that. But like I said, if you look a little, don't scratch too deep under the surface.
Yeah, I think that's where it lands with me. I mean, you want these movies to have more behind them
Yeah,
sometimes, and sometimes this was just a hey, look how pretty this is, and then we'll go
right.
see the next film. So, all right, well, so we gave it a shot, Mike. uh, there are several movies of this purview that we'll give a shot to in the coming weeks and months.
Well, yeah,
But this is probably a good one to start with.
right. And
Yeah,
like I said, to give my actual grumpy meter review, I would say at the time I watched it,
yeah,
at least 4 stars. Loved it. Now as an old fart looking at it, and like I said, probably analyzing it way too much. 2.5 stars, but I could see how people could enjoy it now.
yeah. I'm kind of with you. I mean, what I found about doing this show, just in the limited time we've been doing it, is that if you go in looking for something, you're going to find it.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
you don't typically get surprised, but I think. The better the movie is, the more it fights that urge for you to criticize it. And I don't think this one had legs to push back our grumpiness.
right. Yeah.
You know what I'm
Well,
trying to say?
yeah,
Yeah,
and that's the one thing we'd mentioned about why we do this podcast. It's funny because you you almost feel like you're not doing homework, but when watching it now, I like you say you're almost putting it through some tests. You're in your mind. You're like, okay, does this work? Does this work? Watching Speed on our from our last podcast, that movie worked.
yeah,
Obviously it had a couple of stunts and they were a little outrageous, but everything about it you're not asking questions about the science of it. You're not asking questions about the motivation of the bad
yeah,
guy. You're not asking questions about why did they put this in at the last minute. You're not asking questions of why did they have this
yeah,
character. It all kind of that one really gelled and worked for me. This movie not so much. So
yeah.
when I'm thinking if I'm over analyzing this stuff too much, I'm like, well, I just did that with the Speed movie. That one kind of came through clean,
Well, one of the things I struggle with when people say, when I try to pitch this to people and I tell them, hey, I'm doing this podcast, they say, so what's it about? It's like, well, it should be easy enough to say, but it's kind of difficult. But I'm starting to realize it's not so much film review as it is self reflection.
Yeah,
It's not. It's just about
it's
what kind of person were we when we saw this, and what kind of person are we now, and what changed.
right,
So
and it's what have we? For me, a lot of it's influenced by what I've seen since this movie came out. Like I said,
yeah,
with
yeah,
Interstellar, kind of a more intelligent, movie about space travel,
right,
and other movies we've seen where when we see the Batman Michael Keaton movie, and now we watch superhero movies totally different because we've seen about 50 of them since then. So everything
yeah.
kind of changes based on what we've already kind of lived through.
Well, speaking of like Einstein and relativity and theoretical thinking, you would think by this time in film's evolution that they'd be getting so much better. You learn from your mistakes, and you would think by now we
Right.
would be making nothing but great movies. But guess what? That's
That's true.
not always the case. Yeah, in my industry, my current job, we focus on things called lessons learned, and we build new systems based upon our failures. And the idea here is that every time you do a new iteration, you improve the process, and I can't understand why that doesn't work in films. We screenwriters and directors and producers have had literally 100 years worth of film stock to take notes of, and to hold say, okay, this doesn't work, people don't like this, these themes don't work, you need to do this instead of that. Yet still
Lessons
we
learned.
get Moonfall. We get Moonfall. So, but hey, that's a subject for another podcast. So Mike, speaking of newer things that are out, so as regular people, we kind of review like things that we're currently watching or enjoying. My pick this week is I've gone back to sort of my roots, but sort of the new stuff. I've been watching the reboot, I guess you say, or the relaunch of The Kids in the Hall, the comedy troupe from Canada, the famous one from the late '80s, early '90s. These five geniuses that created this amazing sketch comedy show, and they've kind of started up again with under the Amazon logo. Some of the newer shows, they bite into social commentary, and they're just really funny and genius guys. And I love every one of these guys. They're just great. I grew up with them. But you can check the new season of The Kids of the Hall on Amazon. Really enjoying that. Mike, what are you watching?
Well, I just my wife finished watching Moonfall a couple days ago, and I got to see some of that.
Of
I,
course.
wa- I sat in on it just to watch about 5 or 10 minutes, and yeah, it is what you think it is. Um,
Not good, huh?
no, no bueno. I'm going to continue my trend of going nostalgic on you. I apologize. I really don't watch anything new. I'm still waiting for 1899 to come out. So until then, I will keep watching movies that I'm reminded of after watching one of these movies. Fifth Element reminded me of, like I said, Terry Gilliam. And I thought about one of the movies I watched when I was a kid on HBO was Time Bandits.
Oh
I
yeah.
have not seen it since when it came out on HBO, and that was probably 83, 84. But it had one of our characters today in it, Ian Holm, who actually plays Napoleon Bonaparte, of all people that I remember. Um, but
Ah,
it's a kind of a frightening movie if you watch it. It has a lot of vertically challenged people, in it that are
little people.
great actors, and they're helping a little kid try to find his way home. And along the way, they meet some really interesting characters. They meet a lot of the Monty Python guys and Sean Connery, I think's
Yeah.
in it, and various English actors from the past. It's a really, really crazy, wacky movie, but I can't wait to see it now,
Very
especially
disturbing.
after watching this movie.
Yeah. Well, that's a great pick. Yeah, I remember seeing it and being very disturbed as a young
Yeah,
child, and
yeah.
it's disturbed to the point where I haven't wanted to revisit it since.
Right, yeah, it's
So
it's that same
maybe I'll.
it's the same queasy feeling I had about seeing The Shining. It was like, do I really want to
Yeah,
see this? It's kind of off putting, and
maybe I'll pick it up.
like
Yeah,
I don't think I could handle watching like Brazil again. That movie was genuinely bizarre. And
yeah, yeah,
he has such a Gilliam has such a weird outlook on things. It's very creative, but it's also it's
yeah.
like I said with this movie it's like Ruby Rhodes' character in this movie is challenging.
That's an interesting word. I'm just going to leave that right where it is. So hey, that's going to do it for this week. This week, guys, we really want to thank you guys for your continued support of the show. If you're curious about anything new coming up, you can check us out on our Instagram page. That's at Grumpy Nostalgia. And if you feel compelled to send us an email, making note of our brilliant assertions, you can email us at nostalgigrumps@gmail.com. And I want to shout out to Emmy, who emailed us earlier this week and
Uh
pointed out our foibles that Scooby Doo 2 was a much better comedy than the first Scooby Doo.
oh.
So I just want to. My first reaction is that, hey, Emmy, what are you trying to pull? What are you trying to pull? Who do you think you're talking to
He's
here?
sneaky.
So, in honor of Emmy's suggestion, I'm going to force myself to watch that CGI heavy Great Dane comic caper,
Yes.
and
I want to. I can't.
report back.
Yeah, it's got Freddie Prinze and Matthew Lillard in it. That's who could not ask for more.
Well, you had me at Matthew Lillard, so I'm going to go there. So we have an assignment. So and thanks to Emmy for reaching out to us. So Mike, I'm done.
I'm spent.
Anything else you want? I am spent. Anything else you want to add before you head out, Mike?
No, I just want our audience to consider Ruby Rhodes.
Here he is, the one and only winner of the Gemini Croquet Contest. This boy is fueled like fire.
Yeah, think about it. Think long and hard about that, guys. All right, so that's going to wrap it up, guys. We want to thank all of you guys for listening, and we will see you again next time.